morning, friends. As usual, this is starting another session of knowledge, and today we have selected something different topic, which is startup registration and advantages. Friends, as a practicing CS, you can take it as a new opportunity to provide services and also as a registration. And not only that, you can help so many businessmen startup to help to develop to the country their own economic development, business development. Not only that, you will contribute to the creation of the lot of employment and also technological revolution in the country. You can be part of that if you also support this new startup. We have to understand the opportunity available and has to understand that how this can be done. And that's why this session is there, today's session specifically, how we can help startup and help to the contribution to the country, to the technocrats, to the development, economy, generation. And that's why today's topic. Friends, we have today with us three good, very prominent panelists. We have with us our own professional colleague, Ms. Akanksha Rathi. She is a, welcome Akanksha. She is the founder of Akanksha Rathi and Associate, a 15-year-old CS firm, and she is into a lot of secretarial practice, and also she is providing focus and on the startup compliance. It's also provide different services as per client's requirement, as per the need of the requirement.
Thank you.
And Akanksha is also insolvency professional. Welcome, Akanksha. We will like to learn your knowledge, experience. We have with us Mr. Mohit Shaw. He is a fellow member of Institute of Company Secretary of India. He is a commerce and law graduate. He is the committee member of training and educational facility of ICSI Eastern Region. He has played significant role in various committees of ICSI ERC. He is renowned corporate trainer with entrepreneurial experience apart from secretarial work experience of listed entity. He is associated with various university, institute, professional body like ICSI, ICA, etc. across the nation as a visiting faculty for various training and technical topic-based curriculum. He is also associated with various corporate entities for placement and training assistance. And he is a mentor and guider for more than 40,000 aspirants to found right path. He has won awards, Amul Vidya Bhushan Award for academic and co-curricular activity in the year 2009. Welcome, Mr. Mohit. And now our third prominent different panelist, not our professional colleague, but of course everyone would like to hear it. Mr. Banu Prasad Reddy. He is an alumnus of IIT Mumbai and IIM Bangalore. He worked with a couple of MNC and startup before the started his first venture, Bartronics India Limited, the barcode company in India, where they were specialized in IoT and smart card manufacturing. First company he worked to go for IPO in the barcoding area. Later he invested and mentored many companies and worked in US, Middle East and Sri Lanka, leveraging more products and solutions in the utility sector. Then he was part of Handbot Automation, Grey Logic Technologies, Pay GST and Pay My Vet, and also founding and strategic member of Urban Kishan, which got selected to Combinator at Silicon Valley and innovated soil-less farming using hydroponics. He is directly involved in Metamorphics, Sandfast, Matrix Food, and he is also founding company of Bin File Consulting, by which he is helping many startups and startup companies. He is now the president of IIM Alumni, IIM PacSec at Singapore, and holding many positions in many institutions. And he's also submitted various papers on RFID and AIDC technologies and TICRAD, chairing the programs. Welcome, Mr. Banu Prasad.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Now, as usual, I'll just request each panelist to share their view for 2 minutes. First, Miss Rathi, and then Mr. Banu Prasad. Mr. Banu, we'll request you to take time more and share your journey as well. And then at last, Mr. Bala, and then we'll start the presentation. Over to Ms. Rathi, please.
Thank you, Dipti ma'am, for such a warm welcome and for choosing such a vibrant and dynamic topic. which is like, booming. The startup industry is booming, and with the more PM Modi's Make in India push and Atmanirbhar Bharat, I'm sure this industry will flourish even more in the coming years. So my experience with the startups, basically, we are more into startup compliances because many of my clients are having VC funding. So my focus is more on startup compliances, and I'll give my on-hands experience. I'll share my on-hands experience as we discussed during the meeting. So definitely, India is now the third largest growing economy. So I'm sure in this startups will contribute to a large extent. And as we go through the presentation, I'll share my practical thoughts.
Thanks a lot. Mr. Mohit, please.
Thank you, Dipti ma'am, for the invitation. And the topic is really vibrant, as rightly mentioned by Akansha ma'am as well. Currently, I'm a lecturer in a college. So in a college ecosystem, you find a lot of youngsters moving here and there with a lot of ideas and having the aspiration of starting their own startups. So each and every day, you can say it's my opportunity or luck as well. I happen to come across students coming up with new ideas, how to start a business. I have this new idea, how I can fund it, how exactly I can get support of others. So this topic is something which is very near to my heart. It's a part of my profession as well, because I have my own 2 startups. One I started way back in 2017-16, and currently I've again started one more in a web series production company. So I think it's definitely a great topic, a lot to learn for me as well, which I may not be knowing. And it is definitely going to benefit my students and me personally as well. So looking forward to the entire presentation. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Mohit. Mr. Banu, please.
Yeah, a very good morning to all of you, and thank you, Dipti ma'am, and wonderful team. Let me compliment the team that you have built. Actually, I mean, that's an example to all the entrepreneurs here who are actually standing here, sitting in front of you. I mean, let me thank you for that wonderful thing. As Dr. Mohiji was talking about, we've been part of this ecosystem of startup. But if you look at somebody takes my blood from me, it only talks about startup, nothing else than that. So I was fortunate enough, and I was like another company, employee in company and working there. Maybe some bug there, the entrepreneur bug actually stuck to somebody. And now we are seeing so much happening around the place. In fact, Anushka ji also talked about it. The government of India, a lot of ecosystem that is building up everywhere. We were actually, when I started my company, there was a challenge for me: where to go, whom to meet, who are those guys to give fund to us, who are those bankers, who will come back and talk in front of them. But today, the entire ecosystem has changed, and people are actually waiting with the fund. Actually, it's like a check; somebody is waiting there. How do you knock the doors and everything? I'm so happy that more than 250 and nearly 300 incubators across India are actually helping them. And I was part of that startup company ecosystem when nobody has done it in 1997. I started my own company, and people were laughing at us like, no backup, nothing else. But, I could able to have that courage, more than important, I can say, passion that I had to take up this company to public issue, IPO in 2005 and 2008. I raised fund actually. This is a challenge that I threw to people. And in fact, once you are an entrepreneur, you are always an entrepreneur. So I went back to all the different places across the globe. A lot of work that I have done. In fact, most of the companies in Middle East and other places, I've learned a lot of things from people actually. And today, I'm in a different portfolio that I've been managing it to understand. An agri division is entirely a different division together. I understood what actually agri is needed actually there. So I went and set up something about hydroponics, soilless farming, which is most important thing that is actually happening around. No pesticides, which actually during pandemic we have actually worked on that. And today the education sector, edutech companies are booming up, and we thought domain specific courses, nobody focusing on it. So some of the places where I invested and some places where I'm directly involved right now is actually helping us the ecosystem. And I'm fortunate enough to be part of these incubations across the India. I mean, right from Tea Hub from Hyderabad, you might have seen number of unicorns are happening on the place. Today, I think Akansha ji was talking about how the ecosystem is building up. And today we have more than 100 place unicorns. In fact, recently when we called some of the unicorns to start up in T-Hub in Hyderabad. We just made the list actually. There are more than 300 Sunicorns which are going to become unicorns right now. I think the door is wide open. The only thing is the passion that you got, everybody who are here on this today, is a great platform opportunity. Let's discuss, let's see what problem we can solve up. How do we establish, how do we connect people? What is that? Okay, what is that? The ecosystem is trying to do actually. Let us understand that. And I'm happy to be part of this entire panel. And thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Mr. Banu. Over to Mr. Bala.
Good morning to all of you. I have a great pleasure in welcoming you all, especially the well-expertised panelists here to whom I'm looking forward to learn their practical experiences. I don't want to say anything on this topic much than what is already been said, but I used to read a lot of newspapers and statistics, etc., and other things and all. Whatever I read so far regarding the startup, it is very interesting to know, especially when we are talking about the women empowerment. Almost about closer to 60% of the female entrepreneurs who are actually start up the business are in the age group of 20 to 30. That actually shows what is the youngsters' new innovative ideas with which they come forward and they do it. Another interesting factor is closer to 75% of these women entrepreneurs, they all started with solo, and later on they got the funding, etc., and other things and all. And not only that, almost more than 60% of these women entrepreneurs started at least on an average employing more than 5 people in their firms, and the average revenue is running around 45 lakhs and all this. Really speaking, by looking back about 50 years back when the women were not permitted even to go to school, etc., so many restrictions and other thing and all, I am very much highly impressed the way we are making the progress, recognition of the women, equality is getting through, and especially, what you call, we are all talking in the board members and other things and all, gender neutralization, etc., and other thing and all. I think we are going the right track and giving the opportunity the startups to really help not only to the women, even the other entrepreneurs, but equally the more of the women who are there, who are looked upon only the housewives, etc., we can see the successful thing, which is I am very grateful. We are doing wonderfully well. I think we'll be able to listen, especially we have a lot of female participants here, and we also have the startup females here, so we can listen how they have gone their journey, etc., which will help us to the greater extent. Looking forward to hear from panelists their practical experience. Let us start the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bala. I will request all participants to put the questions in the chat box, and request all the panelists as and when they want to speak anything on the topic, you can just unmute and just speak and share your experience or your point. Over to Rishika. Please, Rishika, start your presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Is the screen visible, ma'am, now?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Very welcome to everyone. Good morning. I am Rishika Katariya, and I welcome you all here. I am very glad and honored to have all the panelists, the fraternity, and the members of Mehta Mehta. The topic of my presentation today is startup registration and its advantages.
Dear all, we have a practice that we only make our trainees to give this presentation, because this is also their part of training. But you will be really surprised that the person presenter is a trainee. You will never realize, and that's the achievement of our all training. Welcome, Rishika.
Thank you so much. To begin with, I'll start with a quote, which is by Steve Jobs, Apple co-founder. The quote says, "Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary." The practical explanation of the quote could perhaps be that when a person is already self-motivated to reach their goal, they'll work hard for it to get the best of its abilities with complete devotion, concentration, and resourcefulness. One such topic that we shall discuss today is startup, which itself means to start something new. To begin with the contents, we shall start with what is startup, introduction to startup, and background about Startup India. the various schemes and policies, including the action plan, the governmental schemes, and about the websites that are set up by the Government of India. Later on, we shall study about the eligibility criteria for registering as a startup, the tax benefits and the exemptions to a startup, the various advantages of a startup, and along with it, we shall see certain cases that will be helpful for us. To begin with, a brief on startup. In India, maximum educated population intend to seek job in various multinational companies and promote job creator attitude instead of job seeker attitude. The government has introduced a Startup India scheme. The Government of India initiated a Startup India regime to support innovation and entrepreneurship in India. A startup is a small new business environment initiated by one or a group of people leading to innovation of various products and services. To be known as a startup unit, it is mandatory for the entity to get themselves registered with the Startup India that is initiated by the Government of India, and this is what distinguishes startups from various other companies. The basis of introduction of startup is modernization and idiosyncrasies. On 16 January 2016, the Indian government launched the Startup India initiative, and this is done to help the entrepreneurs create a dynamic startup ecosystem and to focus India on job creation rather than looking for them. The real aim of the Startup India program is to build a strong ecosystem to promote innovation and entrepreneurship in the country. The process of registering a startup under the Startup India initiative is very simple. One can do it via the mobile app or use the website also. To get registered, one needs to do is to fill up a simple online form and upload just a few documents. The process is completely contactless and paperless and barely takes few minutes. Also, the people who start up in new industries are also known as disruptors because they create certain disruption in the new industries. To introduce the startup, how to initiate a startup consists of various steps. The first and the foremost step is to have a business idea without which we cannot start a startup. And then after deciding the business idea, we shall make a business plan and then secure the funding required through various sources, find a good location, whether it will be conducted online or offline. Becoming a market expert is not easy at all. You need to give it a certain time to become popular in the market area. To popularize the startup, you also need to do certain advertising methods that help a startup popularize. We always have to keep an eye out of competitors because once we start something, there is a surety that certain other people will try to copy and come into the market. To grow the startup towards a successful business is not easy and takes a lot of difficulties and hard work. A startup company can thus be summed up as something that is regarded with making a change, starting from scratch, changing the ways the things are traditionally being done, searching for the product or a perfect fit for the market, filling a gap in the market, being focused on the growth, being completely independent, and searching for a sustainable business model. Now we'll study about Startup India. Startup India is a flagship initiative of the Government of India. It is intended to build a strong ecosystem for nurturing innovation and startups in the country that will drive sustainable economic growth and generate large-scale employment opportunities. The government, through this initiative, aims to empower startups to grow through innovation and design. Startup in India is the most important initiative that was taken by the government in this decade. Definition of a startup. The definition also sums up the eligibility criteria, how a firm will be considered as a startup. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 446B, Clause B of the Companies Act 2013.
Can you be a little slow in the speed, please? Thanks.
Yes, sure. Pursuant to the provision of Section 446B, Clause B of the Companies Act 13, an entity shall be considered as a startup if it satisfies all the following conditions under DPIIT startup recognition, that is, the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. The conditions are that it should be incorporated or registered either as a private limited company under the Companies Act or a partnership firm under the Partnership Act or a limited liability partnership under the LLP Act or a one-person company. The firm should not have completed 10 years since its incorporation or registration. Its turnover for any of the financial years should not exceed INR 100 crores. The most important one being it should work towards innovation or development or improvement of the existing products, processes, services. It's a scalable business model with a high potential of employment generation or wealth creation, thus making innovation one of the most important criteria to be eligible to be a startup. The action plan by the Government of India, with the intention to build a strong ecosystem for nurturing innovation and startups in the country, the Honorable Prime Minister of India launched Startup India Action Plan on 16th January 2016 in New Delhi. With this action plan, the government hopes to accelerate spreading of the startup movement from digital technology sector to a wide array of sectors, including agriculture, manufacturing, social sector, healthcare, education, fintech, etc. And from existing Tier 1 cities to Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, including semi-urban as well as rural areas. The action plan is divided among 3 areas, which are simplification and handholding, funding support and incentives, industry academia partnership, and incubation. Further, the key objectives that we earlier learned in brief can be explained as follows. In simplification and handholding, compliance regime based on self-certification, which can be done by the startups themselves, the Startup India Hub, which is again a website that is set up by the Government of India, rolling out of mobile application and portal, which shall be seen on later, funding support and incentives. The Government of India provides funding support to a fund of funds with a corpus of rupees 10,000 crores. The government has also extended credit guarantee funds for the startups. It has also provided tax exemption on certain capital gains and investment which are done above fair market value. Industry academia partnership and incubation. Annual incubator grant challenge, launching of innovation focused programs for students, harnessing private sector expertise for incubator setup. Now we shall study about the website that was started by the Government of India, a startup portal named www.startupindia.gov.in has been set up by the government, which serves as India's largest online entrepreneurship platform that allows the startup to network, access free tools and resources, and participate in various programs and challenges. We shall also see the website once. Is it visible?
Yeah, now it is visible. Yeah.
So this is the website that is set up by the Government of India, startupindia.gov.in, which is set up by the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade and the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The users can get registered and as well as log in on the Startup India portal and study about the various programs, schemes and policies, the network, the various resources, and the various details about the Startup India Action Plan. The evolution of Startup India can also be seen through a report that is given, the details are given on the website, and the action plans for the coming years has also been given. The website provides access to various valuable online tools and resources for free, such as Knowledge Bank for Startups with an overview of the key terms, processes, stakeholders, legal requirements, and many more activities. The partnered services, including legal help, banking, cloud services, and other services. The templates for every function from legal to HR to finance to customer support. Innovation challenges to get noticed with win cash grants, incubation, mentorship support, and many friendly online courses on top data analytics to design thinking. The steps for registration as a Startup India initiative are the first, incorporate your business. A business must be an entity. The applicant can visit an MCA portal and file an application for registration. The step 2 is to register under Startup India, the website that we saw earlier. On the Startup India portal, an application for registration has to be filed accordingly on the website given. The third step being to get the DPIIT recognition, that is the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. To avail the Department for Promotion of Industry recognition, a certificate has to be filed with various documents. Recognition application being the fourth step. On the startup recognition form, you need to fill the details of the form that may be required. The required documents have to be filled. The various documents, the supporting documents that are required for registration are the incorporation or the registration certificate of the startup, of the company or the firm or the LLP, of funding, if any has been done from outside, authorization letter, a proof of a patent and trademark details, the list of awards or certificates of recognition given to the startups, and the PAN number. The sixth step being a recognition number. On applying the application, the user gets a recognition number for the startup within 2 days after submitting the application online. Certain other areas where the startup can be registered are the patent, trademark, design registration, design clinics, funding, self-certification, etc.
1 minute.
Yes,
You have said that a list of awards or certificate of recognition. So what you are referring here?
ma'am, in the field of business, if they have achieved anything, if they have gained anything from the government of India, they can show those certificates too.
And whether the innovation is compulsory, something new, invention.
Yes, ma'am. Innovation is a necessary criteria for being registered as a startup.
So invention should be there, innovation will be there, what it will be? Because if you say invention, so it will be like a patent eligibility.
Ma'am, it will be innovation.
Innovation, not invention.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I would like to add here that it can be innovation or an improvement also in the existing
Yes.
line of services or your product. So it need not be entirely new thing. And sometimes you do get queries also, like once you fill in the details and your credentials, then sometimes you get queries as to why your startup is in the innovation sector or improvement sector, and how much employment you think you're generating. And there are queries. So given the boom now in the startup registration, many startups are going for it. So now I've seen off late that there have been queries from the department.
Okay, because number is increased.
Yes.
That means, can we say a company which is actually in the operation for a few years, maybe 2 years, 3 years, or something like that, they come out with some of the innovative products, or they come out with the improvement of service, as you rightly say, then they can actually get registered as a startup subject to the other eligibility criteria. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So within the requirement, that is the 10 years or the turnover threshold, if you're not meeting any of those, then you can apply even like few years down the operation.
Yeah, that means it is not necessary startup means it is from the very beginning of the startup you should be. You can be a startup even a later stage of establishing a business with the new ideas.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You just set up a separate entity, and that entity should develop that your new innovation or development or improvement, what you say.
Yeah, correct. You start a business, and then as and when you come across the new things, you can become an eligibility of the startup. You can do that. Yeah. Right.
Professor,
Also-
just to add some point here. In fact, one company which was working from last 6 years, they
Yeah.
thought, they wanted to be somewhere on the logistics side. They built a product which is AI-enabled logistic product. So they have recreated a brand itself, and it became one of the startup there actually.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to
Also,
add,
I would like to, yes, please.
just to add further over here, when it was introduced in 2016, that I'm even a company secretary by profession as well. So we have found a lot of companies have actually disowned their current entity and set up a new entity now to get the benefits of Startup India.
Right.
And we have also found a change of management of various companies which were not doing well in their particular sector. And they have sold their actually company to them. So that the management has changed and they have got a new entity to apply. So this was the medium in the year 2016. And still many companies are doing, because lack of information has even given a great setback to a number of entities who were unable to get benefit of Startup India. So recently we have found a lot of new entities are coming up even to get registered in the Startup India region. Akansha, over to you. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah.
No worries. So I wanted to talk about the slide which is yet to start. So I don't know whether you're covering it in the later slides, Rishika. There are two separate registrations. One is the startup registration is entirely separate thing, and the tax exemption certificate is entirely separate. So these two are two separate registrations. For example, a startup can be registered under the startup registration and may not be availing the tax exemption. So there are two separate registrations.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Akansha, for inputs. Yeah. Yeah, Rishika, go ahead.
Certain tax exemptions to startup are Section 80 IAC of the Income Tax Act. Post getting recognition as a startup may apply for tax exemption under Section 80 IAC of the Income Tax Act. The startup can avail tax holiday for 3 consecutive financial years out of the first 10 financial years after incorporation. The eligibility criteria has to be met as per the DPIIT. The next exemption being Section 54EE of the Income Tax Act 1961. The tax exemption can be gained on the long-term capital gain. It has to be notified by the central government and it can be availed within 6 months from the date of transfer of the asset. The angel tax exemption is one of the most important tax benefit available to the startups. It can be availed post getting recognition. A startup may apply for angel tax exemption. The eligibility criteria for exemption under Section 56(2)(7)(b) of the Income Tax Act has to be fulfilled. The eligibility criteria for the exemption is having a minimum net worth of INR 2 crores or an average return of 25 lakhs in the previous 3 financial years. With these startups will be eligible for 100% tax exemption on the investments that are made in the startups above the fair market value. Certain other tax exemptions are set off carry forward losses and capital gains are allowed in case of change in a shareholding pattern. The tax exemption is also available to individual and Hindu undivided families on investments of long-term capital gains for equity shares of the eligible startups under Section 54GB. The budget presented of the year 2022. The Finance Minister of India on 1st February 2022 announced the extended tax benefits to the startups. Earlier, they were eligible till March 31, 2022, which have now been extended to March 31, 2023, which is an additional year to claim the exemptions for the startups. Such a move is likely to help the young startups in meeting their working capital requirements, especially during the crucial initial years of their operations. The benefits and exemptions under the Companies Act 2013 to the startups are as follows. The companies, as per the Companies Acceptance of Deposits Amendment Rules 2020, Rule 2(1), Clause C 17, the deposit norms for startup companies. The startup companies are now allowed an additional 10 years time to repay their deposits of rupees 25 lakhs or more, which was earlier 5 years. The period has been extended from 5 years to 10 years. The second exemption being Company Share Capital and Debentures Rule 2014. Rule 8, Sub-Rule 4, Issue of Equity Shares. Sweat equity shares, a startup company may issue sweat equity shares up to 50% of its paid up capital up to 5 years from the date of its incorporation or registration.
Rishika, there is a specific exemption for startup because the promoter there do not have proper funds, and if they have to look for the outside fund, then their own holding will be reduced to a minimum and they will not be able to hold the company which they have only created. So there is a specific exemption to startup so that the promoter can take the more sweat equity and keep control over the company which they have promoted. With that intention, this specifically is given. Yeah.
But Dipti, why this exemption or extension of time to 10 years has been given for deposits? That means if a person puts money, gives a deposit to the company, his money first of all is risky, and then he is further to take the risk for another 5 years. Is that
it is from members only?
It's only from members. It's only from members.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they are taking from members.
No, fine. If it's from members, that's no.
Yeah. Yeah, Rishika, go ahead.
The benefits about the merger, demerger, acquisition, amalgamation, and absorption, that is the reconstitution of the companies, as per Section 233 of the Companies Act 2013. The merger or amalgamation of 2 or more startup companies or 1 or more startup company with 1 or more small company is permitted subject to the fulfillment norms of DPIIT. This is not allowed in case of other companies. If they are already set up, they are not eligible to be considered as a startup, but this benefit has been given to them.
Rishika, 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
When you're talking about this tax exemption, I recall Akansha was actually telling there is a separate procedure in income tax registration separately, which means even if you get a startup recognition under the Department of Industries, etc., by using that exemption, probably what you're talking in your earlier slide, that is, the section 80 IAC, in that, I think probably you have to make a separate application setting out you're a startup, you're holding a startup certificate, etc. And probably I think will the income tax also issue a separate certificate recognizing that, so that normally what it happens is when you want to claim certain things, the income tax gives you the recognition. So in this case also there will be a separate certificate will be issued from the income tax.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Akanksha, can you say something more on the subject?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So to my knowledge, there is no separate certificate from the income tax itself. But whenever we are applying on the startup portal itself for the income tax exemption certificate, then probably internally they must be coordinating with the income tax department, and prior to issuing the income tax exemption certificate, they must be taking or discussing with the income tax department. But the registration certificate comes from the startup portal only. We don't have to apply separately to the income tax portal.
Over here, there is a coverage of 80 IAC, that is income from specified businesses. There it is, that is even covered over there. And if you go through the website as well, there's a separate section over there where Bala sir, you can get the details of it.
No. What I am saying, I think my question is a little different. I think I am not talking about getting a startup registration with the income tax department, because what happens, the income tax, they give you the exemption based on that you are the startup. So what happens is when you actually apply for the exemption to the income tax department, you probably get some sort of a certificate or letter, yes, that you are entitled for the exemption or something, some sort of a thing which normally we get. That usually is the case. That is what I'm thinking of. I'm not saying that the income tax will give a separate startup recognition.
No, sir, I got your point.
Yeah.
You are very much correct on that ground, as rightly said by Akanksha ma'am as well.
Yeah.
The startup registration certificate shall be issued by DIBPA website itself.
Correct.
For income tax exemption, there's separate procedure.
Yeah, that
You're
is right.
not getting the exemption automatically for a continuous period of 3 years on the income generated by those startups. You are correct on that.
Yeah.
There's a different process is there.
Yeah, that is what I said. Okay.
That is a different process is there. You are correct.
Yes, Rishika, you can go on.
Rishika, you can, I think you can move ahead.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Abhishek here. Can you please bring that angel tax exemption slide once again? There you are mentioning that post recognition of startup, we may apply for angel tax exemptions, right? So the eligibility criteria for exemption is for that startup or for the investor? That minimum net worth of should be 2 crores and minimum average returns of 25 lakhs in previous 3 years. These are of investors criteria or that is of startups criteria?
It is for investment. It is written that will be eligible for 100% tax exemption on the investment that are made in the startup above the fair market value.
But 56(2)(b), 27(b) of Income Tax Act 1961 also gives the startup the exemption provided the share capital is not exceeding 25 crores and the 25 crore threshold does not have investment of non-resident venture capital and other things. So I think it will also be good to clearly cover the actual 56(2)(7)(b) of the Income Tax Act in this case, which is applicable to the startup from what I am aware of.
Okay, Mr. Malik. Thanks for your input. Mr. Abhishek, your question is answered, or any panelist or participants wants to say anything on the question? Any panelist or participant want to say? Mr. Abhishek, it's clear?
A small confusion is there, ma'am. That minimum net worth of the investor should be 2 crore, right?
Right.
Okay. If we are getting investments from a person who is having net worth below 2 crores, then that and still we are having an angel tax exemptions, then we will not be eligible for this exemption, right?
Right.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Certain other advantages that may be availed by the startups are: the first one being tender participation. The startups can apply for government tenders too they are exempted from the prior expertise criteria applicable to the normal companies answering to the government tenders. This is a very important advantage available to the startups and later on an opportunity of government funding. The government of India has provided a 10,000 crore rupees fund to help the startups as a venture capital. Participation in various government schemes and challenges. The Government of India has proposed to hold 2 startup fests annually, both on national level as well as on international level, to enable the various stakeholders of a startup to meet and exchange ideas. Easy winding up can be another advantage of a startup, as in case of exit of a startup can close its business within 90 days from the date of application of winding up, which is 180 days in other cases. Connection to various networks. Under the scheme of startup, they get opportunities to meet the other startup stakeholders at a particular place and time to exchange various knowledge, their practical experiences.
Actually, from what I heard, Mr. Reddy is right, is the self-certification pertains to there is no inspection in the first 5 years of the startup on with respect to those regulations, unless and until there is a credible information or a whistleblowing come on behalf that. But that does not mean that they will not go back to those 5 years in case of violation post 5 years of inspection. I think this is very, very important on that topic.
Absolutely.
You are absolutely right. I think the inspection waiver is for a period of 3 years, I think, not 5 years. That is the thing. And what is said is, in case of the labor laws, routinely, the people come and visit, they carry out the inspection and other thing and all the report. That has been actually given a waiver for a period of 3 years. But to answer Shailesh Bhai's question, if there is anything goes wrong, as he rightly said, the wages are not paid and other things and all the things, those cases, when it comes, there is nothing is barring them to taking action and inspecting it, doing the thing that is there actually. Because it is actually to expected that they should follow the required regulations and do the things. So the 3 years has been given to them in order to save the time and other thing and not spending inspection, answering, releasing the people. But something goes wrong, there is always a safeguard is actually built from the government end. They will take up the inspection, they will take the initiative.
I think a better method would be to give them waiver from all these laws for a period of 3 years. Waive them. Do what you please. If you can keep your labor with whatever you're paying, keep it. But waive these laws. Don't make it self-certification, where you're not complying, but then you'll go and self-certify that I'm complying. Give a complete waiver for 3 years.
So over here, I think there's a difference in exempting and not having a check on them for a period of 3 years. If they are giving an exemption, then it simply means that when they're resorting to law, they will simply say, "Mere pe applicable nahi tha, so I'm not liable to it." But the government is just making it a very lenient approach, that because in the first phase of 3 years, 4 years for any startup, the major concentration should be on the entire process rather than on compliances. If you talk about the New Companies Act, the New Companies Act is very stringent on various forms of companies. You talk about public, private.
No, Dr. Mohit, in this case, we do not have a level playing field. You see, a person who is very particular about compliances will comply and will be at a disadvantage as against a happy-go-lucky person who says, "Dekha jayega. I will certify it myself."
No, dekha jayega nahi chalega, Shailesh Bhai, because
waisa hi hoga na. I'm certifying. Nobody is coming to check me.
Correct.
Nobody will come to check you one day.
No, they will make you to check. No,
they will make you to check.
That is the problem.
There's always a liability. If I'm doing wrong, I will be punished.
Yeah. An ideal thing would be to exempt them from these laws for 3 years.
Exemption means that they're not liable.
So at least this self-certification is better than exemption. At least at some time they'll be liable.
Because what you are saying, Shailesh Bhai, let them pay lesser salary than what they are entitled and get away with that. Government doesn't want.
Or even don't pay.
Yeah.
Or even don't pay. Shailesh Bhai, you
don't pay. I know. They don't pay.
No.
They don't pay TDS. They don't pay TDS. They don't deposit TDS on time.
Sir,
What
yes,
I've seen
Silence
practically now in many startups where there is VC funding or even an angel investor has invested even a small round if they've raised. So
Yes.
most of these VC or angel investors, at least they try to overview or ensure that
correct.
they are complying, especially with labor laws, because labor law is very wide and there are so many labor acts and we don't know how many labor are there, contract laborers, part-time laborers. So at least, that kind of structure is there. But of course, there's nothing concrete as such to ensure compliance.
And of course, that compliance is.
If you have a VC
Sorry.
investor, surely there will be good amount of supervision. 100%.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
if a person is investing his own funds, for family funds, you will have problems.
So fortunately, most of these startups are mostly in the sunrise sector, or in the service industry, ed tech, prop tech, so where not much labor is involved. So that is one I cannot. I mean, it does not allow us to give an exemption, but that is an advantage. Most of these startups, I have not seen any manufacturing startup as such. So contract labor and all those issues are not there much.
Yeah.
By coming to the stringent action, in case of the labor law, they cannot put anybody and everybody as an in charge of things and get away, because the Labor Law Act, if you know, there was a landmark judgment which came way back somewhere in 97 or something from the Supreme Court. It is only a director who specifically designated as an occupier of the particular manufacturing place. When you are talking about manufacture, he and he only can be responsible. If nobody is designated, all the directors are responsible.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that is the risk on which the people who are running the organization is actually sitting with it. So in this case, it is expected they will be definitely do the right thing. That is what it is expected. If it is not there, checks and balances are not there, rather than getting them free.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Fellas by the sellers by the thing that they are startup we are telling. But let me ask you, how many SME also as on today is not complying? So it is not the exemption. The law is equally applicable to everyone. Only thing what is mentioned is you are not threatened by the inspection, but that doesn't mean you are not to comply, and they will not be responsible for non-compliance. They are certifying that we are complying. So they are getting chance to correct if required later on. So that's why this entire process. You cannot say they are also, see how they can be without law application. They are affecting the entire society. The society will get affected. So you are allowing somebody without law to affect the life of so many people in the society. It cannot be any, no person can live in the
My
world.
point is slightly different. The startups are so important to the economy that we have to encourage startups. Now, what holds them back at times are the stringent labor laws. Give
There are, I will put that way.
So give a blanket exemption. Give a blanket exemption for about 3 years. And let this industry grow. Mr. Varla and Mr. Bhanu Reddy might feel that if you get this sort of exemption, there's a great impetus to the company and they will employ persons who will come.
So, sir, many radical changes are expected in the labor law very shortly, So probably that will ease and weed out all the old compliances and acts. So that might be helpful once that act is passed.
Mr. Bhanu, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, exactly. I just come back to a point actually. In fact, Shailesh bhai, I wanted to give this answer to you. If anybody who's actually going for the initial investment, probably for some time, labor laws actually have not heard many of these startups ecosystems that we have done until now, because it is not a still manufacturing setup is actually happening around the place. So most of the places that I've seen actually, when the first initial round, angel round happens with them, nobody's bothered across picture. But there's somewhere the financial things are becoming much stringent and very clearly they need to file actually. In fact, the Series A funding, Series B funding, any other big funding, when they are coming into picture, they are actually looking at it. They're looking at the financial backgrounds. So they're very careful right now that is happening around the place. In fact, some small startups are, they are just pushing away like mushrooms. But the people who are really serious, they're actually doing their good work actually. And thanks to, again, I'm emphasizing my point again and again, the incubation centers that are across the place, like Startup India, is something that we are discussing about this right now. But most of these startups are actually happening at the incubations, some at individual places. They are able to understand very well.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, of course, there is a comment, why not consider reducing the late fee or penalties for startup? Maybe the suggestion. No, we cannot. Late fee can be considered, but penalties not. Non-compliance should not be. Reduce the financial burden of penalties on them. Maybe. How strong, another question from Kanchan, how strong is the financing structure for startups in our country? What are the prime areas which the angel investors look at when they decide to invest? Very important question, second one. Everyone would like to know that. Panel, who is going to answer this, please?
What exactly,
what is the prime areas which the angel investors look when they actually decide to invest? That's the point.
I mean, I take up this answer, like probably they look at the innovation side. What is that innovation, the differentiation that he is doing it across? Most of the things are like, how are they executing it actually? And who are these, especially the founding members, their background story is one thing that they actually check up, and their passion towards the work. And until now, what they have done on the technology perspective side, what change that they have made actually is what most of the investors will look at it. And also they parallelly, they also look at that how they were been branding themselves, slowly, step by step. So these are the things that which actually goes into the area. And what we see as an investor, what is that innovation change that he has bought? What is that, maybe a lot of people talk about, AI, ML, blockchain, everywhere you go, the people talk about all these technologies. But, the investors actually like to see what is that he has done actually. But this is the initial way that some implementations where they have done it, their feedback is very important to us actually. So this is something that most of these investing communities look at it. There is actually we do work with them and understand what they have done. This is what we actually look at them as an investor's point of view actually.
So future success. Yeah, please. Sorry.
I would like to add something over here. As likely mentioned by Reddy sir, that the background is important. But of late in eastern part of India, where I have met a lot of incubators, including people from Ambuja and some other big corporates, what they have mentioned that scalability is also very important. You might have a very good idea, you might have a very good innovation, but if it is not scalable, where we can multiply at 100x, 1000x, investor is not going to invest. Because I might have a very good idea, because I've seen a lot of struggle of my colleges as well at my own personal front. And I have a very good idea, good innovation, good background, good qualification. But they simply said, can you make it scalable? Can it be 100x, 1000x, or 1 into some x? And second part is valuation. Right now, if you look around, if you've seen the funding of Flipkart, if you've seen the funding of other e-commerce website, they might be running at losses, but they're able to generate a lot of funds from different investors. And the main reason there can be valuation. If you're unable to make money out of profit, go for valuation. And investors even looking how you are creating value, not in terms of society only, but in the overall business as well. So valuation is even being a game changer in nowadays, so that people can fetch their money out of it. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay.
No, so, I go with the point, Mohit. One point you said is scaling up. How are they able to scale up? How global market they can go? Is it a product which can happen? So scaling up is what actually they look at it. Is there any value? What is those things, important points? So scaling up is one of the important points which plays the role actually.
Absolutely, because VC funding is investing to get 100x returns. So, and unless the business is scalable, they are not really interested in funding it.
Right.
But nowadays, VC funds are also seeing the diversity, and the founders' capabilities. If it's a woman entrepreneur or if it's from a backward class or backward cities, tier 2, tier 3 cities. So those kind of things are also kept in mind, while deciding to invest in a fund or not, in a company or not.
And also environment and
ESG, yes, ESG. So ESG is also very
ESG
important.
is one of the important aspect also. Of course,
Like,
there are ESG fund also.
Yeah, Dipti
So-
ma'am, one other important point that you have initially you were talking about that. See, most of this, if you look at divide this ecosystem, startup ecosystem, is something called as incubation. We call it as, okay. That is where you start
Right.
up. The second most important part, most of the people that tend to forget is the mentoring. Actually, this very plays a very important role. This is exactly where they miss up. Actually, they don't know where the financials, who is that institution is trying to help them, how to file their papers, put them into right and record papers. This is very important. And will these points like mentioned about are these scalable? How do we go back and set across? How do you skill yourself more on the fastest side actually? And how do you speed up your startup actually? Those days have gone, right? Where you wait for 5 years, 10 years. I'll come and do some homework over there. So how fast you scale up is what the challenge is. So the most important, the last point comes into the picture is the Y Combinator. What it does actually. People who are actually building up money actually. So when again back to the rolling point, how these promoters are behaving and what is their background, how are they inclined towards the mentorable. See, they should be mentorable actually. So this is exactly what they
Correct.
They should be open to ideas to be able
Correct,
to
correct.
change,
Absolutely.
what the mentors or the directors, investor directors tell them. So I was reading a very interesting, in fact, very natural thing that in entrepreneurship, P stands for patience, which is the most important attribute because all these things take time to build up. So that is very true. So,
To add something here, I joined one of the company way back somewhere in the year 1979 when the turnover of the company was only 5 crores. The company has grown almost about 15 years later to the tune of over 100 crores. That was the time one of the big company, they acquired this business, but their acquiring the business was incidental of getting this business in order to the main business. So they wanted to dispose of this. When they want to dispose of it, they were trying to find out this division who will buy it. At that particular time, the company management themselves, they decided we want to find out some sort of a venture capitalist whereby, we can run the business. When they went there, there was a discussion. I was also there. What they asked is, what is that differently you are going to do than what all these things you have been doing? That was the question which has been asked. I remember that time there was a lot of youngsters who were there working, especially the metallurgical people. This company was actually selling the products to the customers. There are about group of people, they came that we are selling the products. Rather than selling the product, we can actually become what we call a solution providing partner to them. They may buy a product from us or they may not buy a product from us. But the thing is, if they understand their problems and if they can give the solution to that, probably, our value addition will become more. Then it is up to them whether to buy the product from us, they want to buy from their competitors, whatever it is, let them decide. That is what the big change which made ultimately the venture capitalists took over this company. The company was with the venture capitalists for almost about 2 years. By that time, the turnover of the company has grown from 100 crores to 300 crores. And later on, they disposed of it. That's a story. So as you rightly say, it is something what is say the scalable and innovative new ideas. That is what probably the venture capitalists is actually looking. Because I remember definitely when they bought the company, when they sold the company, there was a huge difference. He made the money out of it.
Professor Sab, I differ the ecosystem right now, which is actually happening around the place.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the accelerator programs which done by Y Combinator, they're all actually helping those startups which are actually making some revenue, training them how to go and pitch actually. This is exactly the biggest work which is happening background for all these startup ecosystem. They're asking them how to go and pitch, how to go and ask, how to go and scale up, how do you speed up your startup. These things are happening on the place actually. In fact, if you look at this plays a very vital role. Maybe some exceptions are there. There are some people who are there. They have done it a great way. But what I see, on a regular basis, the ecosystem has completely changed. In fact, if you look at it, we were never there on the unicorns. All of a sudden, how did unicorns happen? You know, what is that the ecosystem has built up actually? What are those influencers who influence them to get things happen? So there's a lot of things have changed, dynamic, changes happened in this ecosystem. On a very positive side, of course, it's also dangerous on the other side or too, on the financial angle. But yes, there are things done properly. We are the economy. One side is working out very sharp side, and all the startups ecosystems are playing very vital role. In fact, earlier when I used to go to colleges, institutions, there was no challenge for the startup actually. In fact, the NEP 2020, called National Education Policy 2020, right from the college days, they're making it mandatory that the startup thing should be there. The Atal Innovation Funding, DPD funding, very, very compulsory actually. So this is one good sign, one good move. At least there is something. We are sowing a seed into the student. Yes, he should take up the entrepreneurship.
And also this gap of, as you rightly mentioned, mentoring is very much necessary. And this incubator play a very crucial role in this mentoring. And whatever we are telling them, mentally prepare the entrepreneur for the compliances, the hurdles, and the, bringing the things in a proper way. So I think that's how they are controlled or directed. And then it is, that's why it is giving effect to ultimate end. And there is a question that till an angel investor, VC strategic investor is arranged, how does a startup garner seed capital and working capital? Many projects of startup may not be bankable as per the banking norms.
So initially you have to, your product or your service has to reach a certain stage before you go out in the market and try to get capital. Like, if you just have something on paper and you go out in the market to get funds, nobody will fund you. And right now the competition is so much, everybody is doing so many innovative things and so much of improvement. The entire startup ecosystem is so competitive that nobody will give you funding. But if your product has reached a certain stage and you have invested sufficient research or sufficient market understanding you have, then instead of the VC or angel investment that comes a little later stage, you can go for crowdfunding. Like Reddy sir mentioned, incubation centers, they play a very vital role. You can reach out to them. Most of these incubation centers don't even charge anything. If you have to just apply to them, and if they find your product or your market understanding and everything good enough, then they give you mentoring, which is very, very important. And you'll get the right contacts from there on what wrong you're doing, how to achieve your goals, and what exactly you should be focusing on. So all those information and guidance you'll get from any of these incubation centers. And in fact, nowadays, even so many colleges, even the graduation colleges I've seen, or even an MBA college has many of these incubation centers. So you can definitely apply. You can just fill a form and apply, and even if you don't get fund, you will get definitely advice from senior people, which is equally important.
Over here, I think the social media explosion and the internet has given a lot of exposures to a number of candidates to understand and gain information. Here we have two categories, as rightly mentioned by Akansha ma'am on this, that until unless you have covered something in your business, no one is going to invest in you. Because any investor is looking for two sides. Number one, how much you're dedicated to the business. And number two, how well you have developed your idea till date. Because there is a concept called seed funding as well, but seed funding is usually applicable for those ideas which are still unexplored or unnurtured. So here again, as rightly mentioned by the other panelists, that until unless you have covered certain journey in your business, getting funds is slightly difficult because you cannot show anything random on paper. This is for each and every student. That I teach in a college, I find people coming up on paper a lot of magical figures. That say in 1 year we'll be going to earn 1 crore, 2 crore, because figures are something which you can put on paper very easily. But when it comes to real practical application, which the investor is actually looking for, then that becomes very difficult. And I still believe maybe in certain part of the country, the very concept of incubators and incubation centers, which is a very promising idea, is not getting access by many students. They're still unaware about how they can access those centers. Absolutely. And that is the main reason why the ecosystem of startup is not growing at that pace at which it should have grown. I think we all need to understand that.
Yeah, and just to tell you one more couple of points I want to add what Akansha and Dr. Mohit ji was talking about it, Mehta ma'am. One is that, there is a lot of grants available there. Most of them are not aware of the grants.
Correct.
In fact,
Right.
this is where the ecosystem is not trying to understand. In fact, what rightly Madam was talking, Akansha was telling about, the startup ecosystem incubators. There's so much of grants. You will not believe. I have been to one of the college in Warangal. I mean, I'm talking about in Telangana, in one of the places, district in Warangal. That incubation center has got 20 crores funding in their system. And they're looking for, literally they went there, sir, do you have any startups with you anywhere from India? Please ask them to come and apply here. We got 20 crores funding available here. Like there's Department of Science and Technology, DST. Nobody is aware. You have to just go and apply it over there across. In fact, there's a seed fund also available there. You do not have to have an idea. You just have to give an idea and just go and tell them this is exactly what you wanted. So this is what the proper ecosystem built up. In other side, you have a Natal Incubation Center. Then we have D Labs from ISB. You name it, IKP. Then apparently these incubation centers can go and raise fund from CSR activities. They can go up. Again, apart from that, we're just talking about the entire, you are mentioning today, the presentation given by you people about, Startup India. Then the other side, we have Make in India, which is actually helping the MSMEs.
Right.
So look at this, the things are happening on the place, in fact. And one side, there is an angel investment communities waiting at every place. There's a Bombay angel investor, Hyderabad angel investor, Chennai angel investor, you name it. There are there actually. And one Moji, I'm sorry, man, I'll just take a point here. Moji was mentioning most of the startups that I see is very saddening. They all start up and think the money will come back. Somebody will come and write a check to you. This is not actually really happens. In fact, they do not know when the fund check or somebody is happening. When to go and ask fund, they're not trained. They just get influenced by something else. So the training is very important. That is exactly where I was insisting the moment I started speaking about it. These such incubation centers, you need to go back and tell them, help them and guide them across.
I would like to add one point over here. It's a personal experience. I think way back in 2017, when I was preparing my checklist or the Excel sheet for the cash flows, cash flow timelines, suddenly I found that in the month of March, something happened due to which 2 lakh rupees were actually made an expense. And suddenly for the coming 3 months, I was not having money. My employees turned up to me that, sir, how you're going to pay us now? Because for the 3 months, you don't have money. Whatever you planned, not in terms of payment, is not working out. So initially, I thought that सब कुछ ठीक चल रहा है, पैसा आ चुका है, and every month I know कितना पैसा जाने वाला है. But suddenly, due to some sudden mishap on my own front, due to the commitment of one of the employees, for the coming 3 months, the investor refused to pay. He simply said, as the timeline was, I will pay the next round of funding in the month of October. Now, for the coming 3 months, khud chala lo. And that time, it was very much saddening at how exactly I have done it. But somehow I managed from my own savings and running a parallel sub-content of the business in order to fund them. So these are the basic challenges which are faced by startups on a regular basis. It's
Mohit, you need to have that thing, that is where you understand how to save for the rainy season.
Absolutely.
People have taught, grandmothers and mothers have taught in the family. Even you see today during pandemic, India never failed. So we know how to do that actually. So we need to learn that ecosystem because the startup guys have to have that stick also. Somebody should come back and tell them, they need to understand way to do it. In fact, it's exactly we are talking about the scaling up. Actually scaling up happens when you concept and research and there is a commitment from you and perseverance. Then the validation that you do across which are there. After validation, your refinement is happening up place to you. That's after validation, after refinement, that's where your scaling will come into picture. Then you establish yourself. So there are a lot of, the process should be done. The cycle should be known very clearly with a lot of clarity and everywhere.
That's why mentors are so important, because they guide us and they have seen the entire journey of any startup. So, they are very, very important.
Nowadays, mentors also are becoming mentalists, In fact, you will not believe, they just call us like mentors. Choosing a right mentor is like very important. It's like getting married to them.
I totally agree on that. I totally agree.
Therefore, Bhanu Reddy, I like the word you invented, mentorable. Lovely
Absolutely,
word.
sir. Absolutely.
Mentorable. Very nice
सर
word.
सुनते नहीं सर अभी सीनियर्स के क्या होता है आई एम टेलिंग यू सर जो सीनियर्स के
Lovely
क्या
word.
होता है आई हैव सीन पीपल हु आर देयर यू नो आई मीन आई एम सॉरी बट यू नो at 45 50 plus knowledge रहता है मगर somebody comes back and asks them to सुनने का because investor like to see how to make his money 10 times 100x उसका एक ही रहता है आइडिया and if you don't see listen to him that's the reason why they choose the youngsters.
They are more moldable, yeah. So they're more flexible.
More mentorable. Lovely word.
I'll give a small example. I'll give a little example. I'm sorry again. I'm taking a lot of time from you people. So we started Urban Kisan. You know, this is a story to tell all of you. It is called as soilless farming. And we just saw somewhere. We came back to after I did my initial IPO and everything with the knowledge. I mean, when I started startup, it was exactly the same thing new. The whole world has changed in the ecosystem. So we had, I was a mentor there at the time. I took that role actually. And background, I was trying to check actually. But one thing, what happened is, since I know what was the problems, how do we go and tackle, we went and met the right people at the right time. For example, in agriculture field, when you're there, I have not met some XYZ person. I just went to an agriculture university. I caught out of them actually. NABARD, I went and spoke to NABARD guys. I went and spoke to somebody there in the ICRSAT side. You know, I actually went to the right place and I connected with those doors, and those guys actually helped them. And my round of investments, when they come back, you know, they were actually looking at, hey, you already there with the ICRSAT guys? They wanted to actually tell me, I'm already there at some place here. So I knocked the right doors, the right people came to mentoring. So this is very, very important to all of us. You know, mentoring is something which plays very important role. That's where our whole ideas change actually. Then there were companies. I mean, I want to tell you to all of you, when we started Urban Kisan, you can Google search Urban Kisan. When we started this company, there were a lot of hydroponics companies which are there in the market. We had 46 companies when I started the company. 46. I want to tell you the numbers to you. 46 hydroponic companies, right from Bombay, Goa, Bangalore, Visakhapatnam, you know, you name the places, we were there. What I did is, you know, we did enough research work. We went and found out which are these companies which are actually working. When the calls made for all the 45, 46 calls, I could be able to get them 6 were active. And what I did is I never went and met the active guys. I went and met the guys who actually failed. So I went 20 random cases. I went all the way, did all my research. I asked them, how did they fail? Why did they fail? That's where my learning process curve went across. So the right mentors, right things, always a place role. And that's where we learned. And that's where the innovation, we added value there actually into the ecosystem. That's where the investing community, the Y Combinator came into picture. They saw what you did actually. So हम लोग तो पानी के बारे में बात कर रहे थे, plants के बारे में, no pesticide, but we have to show them some innovation. We showed that IoT innovation, you know, a lot of things that we have done on the tech side actually. It's all tech today, you know, agri-tech, health tech, med tech, you name it, it's all tech only.
Thanks a lot for your inputs. That learning from failure, that was the super thing.
Somebody has put a question. There is an apprehension of the startup bubbles in connection with the high valuation assigned to startups. Paytm is a case of the study in this aspect. When the listing price tanked, what is the view of the panelists?
After the Paytm debacle, there were certain changes, made by SEBI. So in Paytm or in one of those companies, in one of some of these latest IPO companies, it was mentioned that all the anchor investors exited at the same time, and that's why the share price dropped. So that is why some regulations now, SEBI has made some regulations that anchor investors cannot exit all at once. So you have to exit at one time. And of course, valuation is a very important part in startups because there's no actual basis of valuation as such. It's all on future business and the probability of the economy going in a certain way. So the valuation is always a debatable thing in the startup industry. So right now funding and all the even the IPO pricing, everybody has become a little more conscious after the Paytm and other new age companies listing in the last few months. So now the valuation is definitely dipped for these new age companies. So whoever is coming up with an IPO now, these startups especially, they are valuing their IPO pricing or their shares, a little conservatively post the debacle, because there are no takers in the market for those kind of
One
companies.
more thing has come here. The promoters can make a fine exit like it is seen in Zomato, which made a lot of noise in the market, but at an unbelievable valuation. Again, what are we doing about that?
That is, I think it's a very different portion from the startup one. If you talk about in case of Zomato, I bought the share of Zomato around 130 or 140, and now it is swelling around 53, 54 rupees. And every day I find it in the red line only. See, in that case, it was the matter of rated company, not exactly the portion of startup. And if we are talking about the valuation part, as rightly pointed out by Akansha ma'am as well, that after the scenario of Paytm and some other related companies as well, there has been a conservative approach in terms of valuation. And again, if you talk about valuation in terms of startup, it is just an estimation. It is actually oriented in relation to sales as well, 5x, 4x, 10x, 20x, depending upon the measuring criteria or tool the person is making. So valuation in the current scenario after last 2 years mishaps in various companies, it has got a very conservative approach. People are not hiking it to a greater extent, and valuation definitely is undermined in the current scenario. So I don't think in the upcoming scenario, we will be getting at least for 5 to 6 years, a company coming up with a great valuation on paper and suddenly turning out to be on a negative side. So I think that has been taken care of by SEBI as well, and regulators are paying due attention on it.
No, I mean, I agree with Dr. Mohit, what he was talking about it. In fact, one side, SEBI is taking very strict stand. They're also watching. Don't think that, Big Daddy is always watching, actually. His job is to watch. So there is something that corrections are happening on the place. Today, we're not talking about those big companies issues here. We're not talking about how that startup ecosystem has to build up is my topic, actually. So let us concentrate on this to the other members.
I agree. I agree, Mr. Bam.
You go to Paytm, Zomato's, you go there, you'll never stop, actually. That needs one more day.
Yeah, and one thing, when there is a risk, there is a return. If you expect more return, there will be a risk. We have to understand that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's a game, ma'am. That's actually a different game altogether, actually.
Yeah.
So a lot of, Mehtas, Harshad Mehta sitting there, thousands of people. Don't worry about them, actually.
Okay. Let's come to presentation. Please start.
Yeah. I think we stopped her. I'm very sorry about that, actually.
No. It's okay.
We were carried away with the views and the questions.
Yeah.
It's a discussion which everyone interested. Yeah, please carry on.
The another point being Startup India Hub, which is a one-stop platform for all the stakeholders in the startup ecosystem. It is meant for interaction amongst each other, the startups, to exchange their knowledge and form successful partnerships in a highly dynamic environment. The website for Startup India Hub is also given here. I'll just share it once. This is the website that has been set up for the Startup India Hub. We can see the number of business requests, the investments, the actual jobs, and the visitors to the website. We can see there are a lot of it. And we can see that the startups are progressing a lot.
Let's see the request, investment in pipeline.
Yes.
I think, Mehta ma'am, you have to start one website where aggregator platform tool, Mehta and Mehta aggregator, so everybody knows where to go and ask money, whom to get mentor, whom to go and ask people, actually.
Okay, I'll connect for you that.
Absolutely. I mean, really, this is exactly where a lot of people miss it across. See, there's so many questions I've been reading that we don't know where to go and ask money, where to go to which incubation I should go there. If I started something on the, let's say, deep tech side, drone technology comes under deep. There's so many questions keep piling up. Somebody should be able to tell, and there should be chat box. There should be some helpful guy, one mentor should be there.
Different knowledge method or series has to come.
Mohiji, one very unfortunately, even they're all fresh teachers, professors who college we just came for a job. They make them incubation head. What nonsense is this again? This is exactly I've been talking to all the VCs. How can you make a guy?
I have faced such kind of scenario in a very recent time. Even I have found people are coming from a very rich family. A youngster who doesn't have any business experience, he becomes an incubator with a lot of fund at his back and starts encouraging startups to invest fund. मैंने वहां पे भी उसको एक्सपीरियंस नहीं है, बट फैमिली बिजनेस का बहुत पैसा है, तो वो इंक्यूबेटर बन जाता है, he becomes a funder, investor. So that's a very different scenario. इसमें भी लाइसेंसिंग एंड क्राइटेरिया से भी या आरबीआई को रखना पड़ेगा कि आप इंक्यूबेटर तभी बन पाएंगे जब इतना साल का एक्सपीरियंस हो.
ऐसे लोगों को आदमी मत लेके जाओ, कनेक्ट देम टू मी, एक्चुअली टॉक टू देम वन ऑन वन. शैलेश जी, हम दोनों देख लेते हैं, हम लोग उसको बुलाओ हमारे पास. I could see only one Shailesh ji here raising his voice here, so I am also with him actually. So we both will raise that flags. Number there, Mohit ji, offline. I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead with the presentation.
मैं आपको देता हूँ.
Yeah, please go ahead.
The website that we just saw is initiated to create a platform to aggregate the different offerings of the ecosystem and enable the discovery by the right audience. It has partnered with various organizations to ensure accessibility across the various platforms set up by the Government of India. Certain dedicated apps have also been made available for both Android as well as the Apple phones. The one more initiative taken by the Government of India is Prarambh, the Startup International Summit. Prarambh, which translates to an auspicious start and to begin, is the name given to the Startup India International Summit that saw global participation from various countries across the globe in 2 days. It was hosted by the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade on 15th and 16th January 2021. It was done because it marked the 5th anniversary of the launch of the Startup India initiative. The event celebrated the startups in the world of entertainment, academia, governance, corporate financing, policy making, entrepreneurship, and many more such fields for the overall benefit of the global setup ecosystem. It included a virtual startup showcase, closed door-to-door, business-to-business sessions, and a closed-door session on mobilizing domestic and global capital for the Indian startups. The next is Startup India Yatra. It is also an initiative taken by the Government of India. The Startup India Yatra is a platform to help the entrepreneurs realize and set up their dreams. The Startup India Yatra is aimed to reach each and every district of the country. It's a very creative initiative taken by the Government of India, which has been launched through the Startup India mobile van, which can move and travel throughout the various states and record the people ideas to give them funding. An app named Profile is the technology partner that is used to record the ideas of the people. Some of the other prominent schemes set up by the Government of India are the first one being Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. It was launched in 2015. It is a scheme for startups, Mudra for development of micro units, and Refinance Agency, a financial institution to provide financial assistance to small business for borrowing loans up to rupees 10 lakhs from banks for small non-agriculture income generating activities without giving any collateral. The second one being Credit Guarantee Trust Fund for Micro and Small Enterprises. The Credit Guarantee Fund scheme for micro and small enterprises was launched by the Government of India to make available collateral-free credit to the micro and small enterprises sector. The monetary support to MSMEs in ZED certification scheme, that is Zero Defect, Zero Effect, provides assessment for certification, which promotes manufacturing of world-class quality products and supports the Make in India campaign. The credit-linked capital subsidy for technology upgradation offers a 15% capital subsidy to small-scale industries. When MSMEs avail the loan for technology upgradation, they can enjoy subsidy on such loans. Setting up design clinics, it is done with a view to promote the innovation. The MSME industries that have created design clinics for promoting the design-related expertise for various startups and MSMEs. Under this scheme, the government provides aid up to rupees 60,000 for attending the design seminars and up to 3.75 lakhs or 75% of the cost of a seminar where the entrepreneurial team can learn design theories, latest trends, and the practices being carried around. Besides, government has also set up research and development facilities and around 7 new research parks are being set up to facilitate the developmental activities for the startups. This gives a boost and a scope to focus on innovations. The funding options, as we discussed about on various stages available for the startups, can be the bootstrap financing, which is an ideal plan of action that can be done in the initial stages of a startup when it is difficult to convince people about the ideas of having an investment. The second one being crowdfunding, where when more than one investor is interested to offer money to the startups who offer a fixed amount of money to the startups. The venture capitalists are the professionally managed funds who are looking for startups that have successful potential, and they also provide their expertise to the startups. Angel investment, being one of the most important funding source, is about the individuals who have surplus cash and they look for various investment opportunities, and then the investment is made in the startups who expect a share in the equity of the startup. Other one being IPO, that is initial public offer, which is commonly related to going public, as the general public wants to invest in your company after you gain popularity by buying your shares. The various instruments that can be used in the startups are direct equity or warrants. Direct equity investing deals with long-term growth. When one buys stock, he or she becomes a part owner in the company that gives them a trust. Convertible notes, an investor may take convertible shares, which can either be cashed out at a later stage or converted to equity. Safe note. A safe note is a convertible security like an option or a warrant that allows the investors to buy shares in a future prize round of funding in a startup. The various agreements that can be that have to be entered into by the startups are essential for every business. Some few crucial agreements to be entered are the term sheet, the shareholder and the subscription agreement, and the employment agreement for the key employees. It allows to prove the feasibility of ideas and build confidence to the investors for a further round of funding. And an IPO can be a great strategy for business to grow, but it should be done at the right time after the agreements have been made. Certain compliances, that is the annual compliances as per the Companies Act 2013 that have to be complied by the startups, are very similar to the companies. The events being, the first event being a meeting. The board meetings that have to be done by the startups are that the first board meeting should be held within 30 days of incorporation, and minimum 2 meetings have to be conducted in a year, one being in each half of the calendar year, and the minimum gap being 90 days. A general meeting has also to be held. The gap should not exceed 15 months. Second being directors' disclosures given in MBP 1 and DIR 8 form. It needs to be filed by the company whenever there is a change in the interest during the year. DIR 8 has to be filed at the time of appointment and reappointment of the directors. Other events being appointment of auditor. The auditor has to be appointed by the startups within 30 days of incorporation in the first board meeting, and Form ADT1 has to be filed for their appointment within 15 days. The subsequent auditor is appointed by the shareholders in the annual general meetings for 5 years period. Annual filings, the director's report, AOC4 form and MGT7 have to be signed by the chairperson if authorized by the board, or it should be signed by at least 2 directors. Form AOC4 has to be filed within 30 days of holding the annual general meeting, and Form MGT7 has to be filed within 60 days of holding the meeting or due date of holding the AGM. A return on deposits has also to be filed by the startups on yearly basis in Form DPT3, which has to be done on or before 30th June after the end of the financial year. Certain other compliances which have to be complied under the tax laws are assessment and periodic payment of advance tax, filing of income tax returns before due dates, filing tax audit reports, the periodic payment of GST, tax deducted at source, and TCS, filing of the GST returns which are done on monthly and quarterly basis, and filing of TDS returns which have to be done on a quarterly basis. The incentives and relaxations under Companies Act 2013 for the startups include that they are not required to include the cash flow statement in their financial statements. As per Section 73 of the Companies Act, that is prohibition on acceptance of deposit, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs exempts the startup to avail limitless loans from its members up to 5 years from the date they are incorporated. As per Section 92, that is the annual returns of the Companies Act 2013, the annual return can be signed by the director of the company if no company secretary is required to be appointed by the startup. Section 173, that is board meetings. An exemption is given to the startups for holding quarterly board meetings every year. Only 2 board meetings in a calendar year have to be conducted, and the gap should be at least 90 days. Fast track settlement under Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs notifies the startups as fast track firms, which enables their operations within 90 days as against 180 days, which are applicable for other companies other than startups. Labor and environmental laws. In the case of labor legislation, no inspections are conducted for the first 3 years after their incorporation. External commercial borrowing. The Reserve Bank of India has permitted the startup enterprises to access loans under the ECB framework with few conditions in the form of loans or non-convertible, optionally convertible, or partially convertible preference shares under this framework.
Just 1 minute. You have any experience of fast track closure in IBC panelist? Because they are telling fast track firms, they are allowed in 90 days against 180 days. Something has happened or anyone has filed or kind of thing?
Timeline that they've provided for even for normal cases, you would have seen practically it's no, not a single case would have been resolved by within 180. So I feel this is more on a paper within 90 days.
I know, because that in IBC also fast track is not implemented. So I don't know. So this is just on a paper. Okay, please.
Actually, up till now, startups would not have faced this stressed companies, because generally startups are what, like 5 years old or so. So probably they wouldn't have faced this kind of situation actually under IBC, to go under IBC.
No idea. Anyone in panel has faced any question of this nature?
No,
Other panelists? No.
No, I have not come through across.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, please.
Dipti, all the startups are doing well. No startup has gone for winding up.
Okay.
So startups are definitely in need of funds at all times, but IBC is not evaluated by them, because IBC is a very costly and time-consuming process. No? So I don't know whether startups would be willing to spend that amount.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
To summarize the concept that we studied earlier and the various advantages and the registration process, it can be summarized as various tax benefits are available to the startups, tender participation is allowed to the startups at the early stage, opportunity of government funding is also possible, that is a 10,000 crore rupees corpus that is given by the government of India, participation in various government schemes that are set up by the government of India, and to participate in startup grand challenges that are organized by the government to enhance the working of the startups, an easy winding up process.
1 minute, there is a question. Does non-convertible in this slide means non-convertible preference shares under ECB? But can a company can issue such non-convertible preference shares under Companies Act 2013? Please clarify.
Should I go back to the back?
Go back. Non-convertible in the forms of loans or non-convertible, optionally convertible or partially convertible preferences under this framework. So does non-convertible in this slide means non-convertible preferences under ECB? But can company can issue such non-convertible preferences? Yeah, non-convertible preferences are allowed. Convertible allowed, see, convertible allowed, non-convertible allowed, convertible into equity.
Non-convertible for 20 years or something.
Dipti ma'am, just I can add that under the ECB framework, other than for startup, the compulsory convertible preference shares are only the option to go with. So for the startup, there is a relaxation. They can also go for the non-convertible or optionally convertible preference shares other than CCP.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Yeah, please go ahead.
Connection with various networks and other startups to build partnerships and move forward to gain further advantages. Self-certification, rebate in patent, trademark, and other intellectual property filing, rebate in trademark filing, and availing various business opportunities in a versatile and a dynamic environment for the startups is also available. Certain case studies we'll see now. India has set up itself as one of the greatest startup centers around the world. Every other day, a new startup arises out of the box that we can see around us, in which almost 90% of the new startups fail in their initial early days. This is because they do not come to a later stage, and thriving in this condition makes a startup successful. From food delivery startups to fintech startups, they urge people to be a part of the Indian startup ecosystem and its culture by becoming an entrepreneur. India's startup landscape can be seen in e-commerce, fintech, consumer services, enterprise technology, transport technology, to various apps like Ola, Fasos, Big Basket, PhonePe, Paytm, Zomato, Pepperfry, Flipkart, etc. Certain case studies that we'll see now are the first one being Oyo. It was started in 2013, and the founder of Oyo is Mr. Ritesh Agrawal, who serves in the industry of hospitality. The net valuation of Oyo is approximately $16 billion. The founder of unicorn startup, Mr. Ritesh, has made it one of the largest hotel chains in the world, which currently operates in more than 800 urban areas across countries like India, China, Brazil, Japan, United States, and many more countries. Airbnb was the greatest motivation for Sir Ritesh Agrawal, who began his journey as a traveler. And when they saw that there was a huge problem in the hotel industry, they took it as an opportunity to improve the conditions and become an entrepreneur and solve that problem by initiating Oyo. The second startup idea that we have seen through a very successful woman entrepreneur was started in 2012 by Miss Falguni Nair, the brand being Nykaa, in the industry, e-commerce, fashion, and beauty. The assessed valuation of Nykaa today is approximately $750 million. She, ma'am Falguni Nair, is a former student who left her regular place of employment at Kotak at the age of 50 to seek after her fantasies about building up Nykaa. The stage was dispatched to build one of the one-step foundation of magnificent items in India. It makes it an excellent elite internet business stage. This design stage opened its first disconnected store at an airport in T3 Terminal IGI in November 2015. The third example being Dunzo, which was started in 2014 by the organizers, Mr. Kabir Biswas, Mr. Ankur Agrawal, Mr. Dalveer Suri, and Mr. Mukund Jha. They serve in the industry of consumer service, who deliver pet supplies. They send packages from one place to another. They deliver groceries, food items, medicines, along with meat and fish products. Dunzo is typically a hyper nearby startup stories conveyance application that discovers everything without exception in a city and conveys everything. It likewise runs like a bicycle taxi administration in Gurgaon and offers offices in Bangalore, Delhi, Gurgaon, Pune, Chennai, and Hyderabad. This fruitful new company in India changes the manner in which you can move things, shop, and never get to your home. The app joins you to the nearest dealer that can arrange, get, and convey the supplies from any shop or eatery in the available zones. Another example of a case study being Zerodha, which was started in 2010, which today is #1 stockbroker in India. The author of Zerodha is Mr. Nitin Kamath in the industry of stock business organization. The assessed annual valuation of Zerodha being rupees 850 crores. And prior to establishing Zerodha, Mr. Nitin worked at a call community around evening time and exchanged the morning hours. When they were of 17 years old, they were acquainted with the financial exchange by his companion and has since begun exchanging. The firm didn't burn through cash or promoting or advertising its organization. They do not make promotions as they do not need it because it's already been on a very good position. They bring in cash by charging a similar amount of rupees 20 paid choices and interior exchange. These were certain examples of the startup that have flourished and have been very successful in the recent years. Another example that we shall see is PepperTap, which is an example of a failed startup that could not survive in the market, which was started in 2014, and the originators were Mr. Navneet Singh and Mr. Milind Sharma. They serve in the industry of e-commerce relating to delivery and food processing, just like Zomato or Dunzo. The assessed valuation of PepperTap was around $51.2 million. It was initiated as a marketplace for the people to order groceries online at a cheaper price. Moreover, the brand promised to get the order delivered within 2 hours at the customer's doorstep. The company raised a massive fundings of $51.2 million over 4 rounds, and only because of the idea, the PepperTap was so promising at earlier stages, but they went all in later on. Unfortunately, in April 2016, PepperTap announced that they were pulling its all shutter down as they had been in all losses. Now we'll see a very important aspect of startup, that is women entrepreneurship in the field of startups. We have seen consistent development in the Indian startup ecosystem. More and more women are chasing the entrepreneurial dream and flourishing in their ventures. These Wonder Women are inspiring other ladies to venture on the path of entrepreneurship through their success stories comprising of their personal struggles and challenges. They have come out of their homes from being just a homemaker to being a woman entrepreneur. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs of India amongst us are Ms. Aditi Gupta, who is the founder of Menstrupedia, which works on spreading awareness about menstruation. Ms. Ghazal Alak, co-founder of Mama Earth, a home brand product that's a personal care brand providing products to babies, from babies to old aged. Ms. Malika Sadani, the founder and the CEO of the Moms Company, a leading brand for babies and consumers seeking personal care solutions, started making products for her babies. Ms. Falguni Nair, founder of Nykaa, as we saw earlier, India's beauty product retailer, is also one of the most successful entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in India. Also, Ms. Kalpana Saroj, the chairman of Kamani Tubes, is the first Indian women entrepreneur. Ms. Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, the founder of Biocon, is the richest female entrepreneur in India, being one of the most successful startups that was set up by her. To conclude, we'll see about the report, the Startup India report. Since 2016, when the website was initiated, the India's prospectus about the startup is, as per the economic survey conducted in 2020-21, which was tabled in the parliament, the government has recognized around 41,061 startups as of December 23, 2020. And out of this, more than 39,000 startups have reported 470,000 jobs, which also creates employment opportunities for a lot of people in India. India currently houses the world's third largest startup ecosystem, with 38 firms being valued at over $1 billion, which are also known as unicorns. In 2020, the country minted around 12 such unicorns, despite the disruption to the economy caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. With the government opening up the space sector for private players, there are more than 40 startups working on space and satellite projects with funding teams and structure, the survey said, citing industry estimates. Over the past few years, India has seen many upcoming startups which have changed the way people think, work, and live, and have changed their standards of living. They are driven with an idea, a unique idea, plus the technology solutions that evolve the concept of entrepreneurship. We can also say, now we can say that is initiating a startup very difficult? A big no. But does it take a lot of dedication? Definitely yes. It also requires hard work and an effective roadmap to be followed.
Thanks a lot, Rishika. Wonderful presentation.
Very good.
You presented a very summarized form. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rishika. I mean, I really
Rishika.
want to thank you, Rishika, for one thing. I don't know how many people have observed it. While she was talking about Falguni ji ma'am at Nykaa, you know, she didn't say Falguni. She said Madam Falguni Ulke.
That respect comes naturally.
Absolutely. I was so much mesmerized. In fact, and that's a very great part. In fact, Rishika, I mean, we're proud actually. Just to see the list of the women entrepreneurs. I'm happy that, you know, Biocon lady here, Kiran Mudan Shah, she was our chairperson for IIM Bangalore. I worked with her very closely I mean, I could just definitely see woman power altogether. I mean, I am blessed with two daughters. I always feel these should be the role model for her actually. And great people. I even met Falguni ma'am also. One of my projects when we were doing with barcoding project. So I did work out with her. I missed one opportunity as an investor into Nika. That made me to invest money in this time. I started a company called Luho Box, a beauty product company. I never wanted to miss that actually in the race actually. So great overall, I'm very happy. And you missed one of the youngest entrepreneur. And two things before I close down. Ma'am, you have time? I can just share.
Yeah, sure.
One is this paper and parcels. How many people are aware of this guy? Tilak Mehta?
Yeah.
Tilak Mehta is a young guy, 12 years old boy from fifth class. He just
Right.
started a company. It's a 150 crore turnover company from Mumbai. And he used this Dabba Wala help and made
Right.
the same time delivery. That's a beautiful story. I mean, I wanted people to understand, oh, yesh ki mamla hi nahi hai. Bhul jao. Startup ke liye, don't worry about this. In fact, the oldest lady, I think Harbhajan Kaur ma'am, she's 94 years old lady from Punjab, she started
Punjab.
and Besan ki barfi, when our granddaughter came back,
Right.
very beautiful story, In fact, I have my goosebumps that keep coming whenever she spoke actually. She said, Mera shadi hua tha when she was 12 years old. Bachpan mein shadi kar di hai, biwi tha, father tha, parent took over, husband took over, family took over. And she said she never was an independent lady. So my great granddaughter said, ma'am, dadi, if kaam karo to kya kar sakti hai? So she went and started this besan ki barfi, laddu jo banate hai. She started selling it and made money. And that one day she actually wore a dress and purchased with her own money. She said, this is my pride of my day. Even if I die today, I'll be happy. And this is, I purchased with my own money actually. That's something that I, inspiration, and before that, one of these Shark Tank, you missed out actually. There were 3 Shark Tanks from Hyderabad. So I was fortunate enough to be part of those Shark Tank. One of the story was Viva Life, a diabetic girl born there called Varshita. I know how many people have seen this actually. I invested money. I've seen this young girl called Varshita who met me in Hyderabad Central University. And she said, everything we need a story. She had a passion and she was at the age of 20, she came and met me actually. So that's, she said she's a born diabetic girl actually. How she fought her life when she left IIT, did a biotechnology, and she wanted to find a device. She said, sir, my fingers are all, and poken the blood, the samples have taken 60,000 times my
Oh my God.
finger. And this girl, I should look at her fingers, I mean, go back and check this Shark Tank. Piyush Bansal and everybody said, you are Bharat ki beti hai. And so wonderful, in fact, I would suggest each one of you to create those ecosystems. You should have a story to tell to the rest of the world who will listen to you actually. And very appreciation and thank you so much for presentation. I'm sure, ma'am, I'm going to help you to become and this is such a great presentation. You brought in so many things together. In fact, I being investing so many places and never knew so much of complications there. अभी तो मैं डर रहा हूँ कि पैसे में लगाऊं नहीं लगाऊं. So thanks again. To all the mentors, everybody.
I am very much highly delighted to see the successful women entrepreneur because I've been watching for the last almost about 60 years, then and now, the great change which has actually taken place. I really see the women actually growing up and they are becoming a successful entrepreneur. I am very highly delighted to see the great change which is happening.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rishika, for presentation.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for the inviting me for this vibrant topic. And I would like to add here that ESOPs is also very important
Right,
tool in
very
a startup
important, yeah.
in a startup company, because they don't have actual money to pay the salaries.
Right.
So generally, most of the startups offer ESOPs, and ESOP pool is created the first thing in the startup. So that is also one
very
paper
important
in the document that we have to keep in mind. So that's it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great thanks to all the panelists. It is a very good learning experience to hear from you, your practical experiences very much. Really, the knowledge addition which has happened today, it's a continuous learning. I really express my sincere appreciation to all of you. Thanks a lot to the.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks
Thanks,
a lot to
Mr.
the.
Mohit. Thanks, Mr. Akansha, and thanks, Mr. Banu. All of you, thanks. You have added the flavor to our webinar. Thanks a lot for your time.
Great.
Thanks, participants.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks a lot
Thank
to
you.
participants as well.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mohit. Thank you, Akansha. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Kashyap.
Yeah, but are you sharing the presentation?
Yeah, it will be
Yeah,
shared
yeah.
with your registered
Thank
email
you.
ID.
It's
You'll
very
get the
precise and good.
Yeah,
Good.
it
Thank
will be
you.
shared.
Thank you.
Kashyap, you will start one startup, and we will be, you, Mr. Banu will help you to fund and mentor. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks. Thank
Thank you,
Thanks.
Kashyap. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Thank you so much, panelists, for all your knowledge. We are very glad to have you all amongst us. Thank you. Thank you, Dipti ma'am. Thank you, Professor.
Thanks, Rishika. Bye.